Carmen Berkley, thank you so much for being on the Heaven on Earth podcast. It is just seeing your smile and feeling your energy. I know anyone who's going to watch this podcast is just going to feel you. And it's so interesting because already as we move into 2024, part of the spiritual mandate is that we're going to move into beingness, and your beingness is so powerful. So welcome. I am just thrilled to have you. Let me introduce you really quickly so people know who you are. I've got it here and I'm going to be reading. So you believe, okay, that communities are powerful and that they deserve to be heard, safe, well resourced and given the tools to achieve their dreams, to ensure racial justice, equity, and freedom in our lifetime. This is your belief. And right now, who you are, in order to serve that principle, is that you're the vice president of strategy and impact for Inatai Foundation, where you lead policy and advocacy. Of course, you do, because that's just your beingness. Communications, collaborations, capacity building, and grant making connected to this long-term vision. This long-term vision, of course. So you are a sharer, a giver, a builder, and just you epitomize who I want on this podcast.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome. Do you want to just start by saying a little bit about that, about who you are in the world these days, who on many levels? So bring yourself.
Sure. Well, listening to you read that part of my bio, I feel like even my bio has transformed because I think there was a world where my bio used to be a lot more about like jobs that I've had. I mean, I could tell you 20 years worth of jobs, but I don't think that that's who I am. I think that who I am is somebody that deeply cares about other people, that cares a lot about justice and freedom and how to help people get there. And where that comes from is growing up in a family that is full of women that are primarily caretakers and caregivers. I grew up with my grandmother, my mother, my aunt, and my sister. And those four women are really, they are the nucleus in my life. And even though all four of them are very different personality wise, they all play a different role in my life. I think that each of them cares for people, whether it be our family members or people in the community, in a different way. And so, because I have these amazing role models for what it looks like to care for community, they gave that to me. That's so deeply ingrained in my heart, whether it was folks that in our family that needed a place to live or stay for a couple of days or a couple of weeks or years, or if it was something was happening in our community and folks in my family took it to the streets because people just needed more money, more stuff. And so I think that the sensibility that has been gifted to me was one that believes that our people deserve more than what was given to us and what we're told we should have. And I think that especially as a Black woman that is just trying to navigate through society, I have been so honored and so blessed to have worked with some really incredible, amazing people. And so it has led me from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to Atlanta, Georgia, which is where I'm visiting right now, to Washington, D.C., working in advocacy for many, many years at some amazing organizations, helping communities build power. And my journey has led me to Seattle, Washington, to the other side of the country. And now I get a chance to work on racial justice and equity in Washington state. And for me, even though initially I was really challenged about living in Washington, I really believe that it is truly a part of my destiny to live in Washington because it's a healing place, which I'm happy to talk more
Yes,
about.
yes, yes, yes. Oh my gosh, you've already given me so much juice. So can we just start riffing because it just starts, you know how I work, it
Yeah.
just starts popping in me. So part of it is already you've been touching on your volume one, the story that you were born into, the story that we don't even know we're living out, that we're just being given, whether it's our wounds or our gifts or our blessings. You've already started talking about that. And I want to invite you to do that. And you already know that the sequence is volume two is the awakenings.
Hmm.
The awakenings, whether it be through hardships or through just gifts, spiritual gifts that we've received, or gifts from people. And then volume three is heaven on earth and new earth. And so you've just spoken to all three of those. Um, the other thing that just, when you say our people, can you say more about that? Let's get into your volume one. Let's get into your our people and the gift of community, which is what you're talking about a lot.
Yeah. Our people. I mean, I feel like a lot of people are my people.
Nuestra
Yeah.
gente.
But I I mean,
Mhm.
who are my people?
It's so beautiful. It's such a beautiful phrase. Yes.
I feel very held by a lot of people. And I think that if I were to narrow it down, particularly being raised by very strong Black women, I think that who I seek to protect are like a class of women and Black women, other women of color. Um, they really do feel like that's where my soul often leads me to. That's what burns me in my belly. And I think that when I am doing my work every single day, or when I am most frustrated, even as a child and as a young person, I would always sit under the matriarchs of my family. I have a lot of aunties. My grandmother is of 10 brothers and sisters, and my grandmother is the eldest living of them. And so growing up as the grandchild of this woman who's still alive, she's 99, her name is Alma. I was raised to really revere women. I mean, I put their opinion on a real pedestal. And so I do believe that the role that they play, whether they're playing the role of mother, confidant, consigliere, auntie, all that, I feel like that's the basis of our people. But then, even to expand it, our people, to me, they're justice seekers. I mean, they're, if it's almost as if they're people that have a shield on underneath their clothes. And when I was younger, my mom sent me to private school. So we grew up in like a very working class part of Pittsburgh. But my mom was like, I'm not sending you to the public school. You're going to the private school because you have something else going on over here, ma'am. And I was like one of the only Black people at that school. And it was tough being one of the only Black people at that school. And oftentimes I had to be an advocate. And this is like way before I even understood advocacy or organizing or policy. But often my own identity as a Black person was being erased or muted, or the way that I was thinking or speaking was being diminished. And so I would have to speak up, even, and I didn't even understand what it meant that I was speaking up, but I had to. And then there would be these other people, and this was like beyond race, beyond gender, that would speak up with me. And I remember these people that would speak up with me, but I would speak up for other people in the class that were also being honestly discriminated against, or people weren't thinking about them. I remember there were people in my second grade class that had disabilities, and we weren't thinking about like the learning experience for them, or they weren't being treated well in the cafeteria, and I felt like compelled to speak up for them.
Can
So
you
for
give
me,
some examples, like really specifically, Carmen, of that?
yeah.
Actually, can you like this instinctual speaking up for justice? It's almost like you just couldn't help yourself in
Mhm.
second grade. Can you give some examples? And interesting that how other people joined. Can you talk about that whole formula?
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
Um, I vaguely remember there was a teacher. She was trying to make a point, like, well, we shouldn't need to have like a Black History Month. And the point that she was trying to make was like, if society was better, then you wouldn't necessarily need to have all of these different months, because we wouldn't need to like break down the races. But in the second grade, that was too complex. So I went home to my parents, and I just, I didn't have that analysis in the second grade. I didn't know what she was talking about. So I went back to my mom, and I was like, they said that we don't need Black History Month at school. Like, I remember coming home and saying that. And my mom was like, what? What do you mean? And my parents were not together, but both of my parents are very like culturally Black. And so they were like, oh, no, 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 no. We are coming up to the school and we're going to talk about this. And so I remember my parents come up to the school. We go to try to have this conversation with the teacher, and the teacher tries to like walk it back. And she's like, well, that's not really what I was trying to say. And I remember speaking up. No, that's what you said. For me, that was one of my first times. I remember challenging authority, like actually saying, no, that is what you said. And my parents know, yes, I've always had this personality, big, bubbly, a lot of exaggeration, a lot of hyperbole, but I'm not a liar. Everybody that knows me knows I am not a liar. So if I said, or if I heard a thing and I came home and said it back to my mom, then I probably said that. So for me, at least, that was my first real memory of there's a disconnect between the things that someone's saying to me and what's happening in my world. And I'm allowed to challenge that. But I think, second, at the school that I went to, there was a woman, I'll call her Rachel. And I don't know, she was very thin. And I don't know what type of like social, maybe like disability that she had, but she was like very, very, very socially awkward, and she was very, very, very thin. And oftentimes people made fun of her, or they would ignore her when we were in school, like socializing in the cafeteria. And honestly, Claudia, I was always very popular, always talking,
I'm
chatty Kathy
sure.
Carmen.
I'm sure.
And it always made me feel uncomfortable seeing her sitting alone. It still makes me feel uncomfortable when I see people sitting alone. I always want to like bring them in. And so I knew that I couldn't bring her into my friend group, but I did know that I could befriend her. And so through time, I like if I had the opportunity to sit near her in the cafeteria, I would. If there was an opportunity to bring her over to us, I would. And I knew that we were too loud for her in the cafeteria, but I could tell that she was having a good time. And back in the day, that was when like you could like go to people's house and hang out with their families. I would go to Rachel's house and hang out with her. And I don't even know if people knew that we had that type of relationship. But I think for me, that is probably even connected to why even now I have a almost like a keen awareness of when people are feeling left out. Like I notice when somebody is sitting by themselves. And there are some people that want to sit by themselves, but I also think that for me, there's almost like a responsibility that we have, like the people with the bubbly personality, to pull people in. So that's not necessarily an example of like the advocacy example. But I do feel like very early on in elementary school, I started to, one, I found my voice very early on. And I had to because I was like one of two Black people in my class for a long time. And the second was I really never wanted people to be alone. And I wanted to use my like power of popularity to make people like to belong. And I think I probably still do it now. I'm just more aware of like different personality types and try not to put all of my extra extroverted energy onto perhaps like people that maybe want some time apart.
They need their downtime. Exactly. So let me, before I forget, let me just sort of touch on a few things that you were saying just to highlight them. So, and I wear multiple hats, as you know. So in my psychotherapy hat, I absolutely love that story. One of the questions I was going to have is like being one of two black little girls in your classroom or even in the school, like who did you go to? Who did you go to talk about that experience? And I want you to just hold that for a second because, this idea of what we go through and who we go to when we're younger, are we alone? Can we speak our truth now? And our fear and um, our tenderness and our vulnerability, right? So in this case, you went to your parents, and my psychotherapy hat wants to note this. One is when a child does that, they are having this experience of, is this okay? Right? They are having this experience of cognitive dissonance, like, my uncle was watching porn in front of me, or or someone was playing with fire. Is this okay? So you went to your parents and were like, my teacher said this. There is this cognitive dissonance that's going on. Like, is this okay? Which is so powerful when children do that. The second thing is, I love tracking what I call acts of revolution that we don't even know are acts of revolution when we're children. When we say no to someone, when we speak up, and we don't even know it, it's just something inside of us that revolts against and that could be with a parent as well, but an authority figure. So I really want to mark that. I want to mark and honor that little act of revolution, which was actually pretty big, right? To say, hey, are you saying we shouldn't have Black History Month? And your parents just marching in. And I'm not sure that was your whole story, but that was a moment of secure attachment of your parents marching in with you and being in your corner. We have those moments with our parents, and then sometimes there's tons of glitches after that. But the other thing, and this is a spoiler alert for where we're headed, right, Carmen, which is my empath leader side, which is these are clear markers of being an empath. An empath, the time you will see the empath with lightning bolts is when they see any sort of injustice or bullying, period. Period. Um, and this needing to soothe someone else's pain, or to be with them, or to psychically feel them, which you did with this young girl. And lastly is your communal piece. You're like, we've got to come together. So anyway, please continue with volume 1 of you. So that is advocacy. It is community advocacy, actually.
Well, you asked me a question, who did I go to?
Mhm.
And I my kindergarten teacher's name was Miss King. And Miss King was a Native woman. She was the first woman of color that I ever met outside of the, people in my family. I didn't really have a concept of race until I went to school, because in preschool, I mean, there were multiple like races, but nobody talked about that. And then growing up, I don't know, nobody ever talked about race in my family. So when
Mm.
we were just black people, and there was a pride in that, but I just cannot remember us ever like creating a lot of division. It
Mhm.
really wasn't until I got to kindergarten, and mind you, I went to this private school. My sister also went there too. Now my sister is 12 years older than me, 11 years older than me. I was in kindergarten, she was in the 12th grade, and we went to the same school. My sister is very fair skinned and I'm brown skin. So I'm in kindergarten, she's in the 12th grade. And when I get into kindergarten with all my big personality, brown self, living my best life, I was a great kindergartner, but I was having challenges socializing a little bit in that environment. It was a very new environment for me. And I was being bullied a little bit. And there were racial things that were coming up that I didn't really understand as being racial because I didn't know what that was. And so Miss King was a savior. I'm trying not to cry. You know I'm sensitive, Claudia.
Cry
Miss
away, cry away, cry away. This whole podcast is about us, about humanity. Yes.
Miss King was a refuge. She was someone that I could talk to. And because I didn't have the language, she did not even try to give me the language. Like, oh, well, maybe the reason why they're bullying you is because you're black. She would just try to comfort me. And she would try to talk to me about even her own life experiences, which is how I found out she was a Native woman in the first place. And I remember my mother saying to me, Miss King is Native. I didn't know what Native was. The other person that made me feel a lot of comfort was my
Please
sister.
honor her.
Oh my goodness.
Right,
I
let's
love Miss
honor
King.
her. Let's put love and
Oh,
light, because finding these sort of angelic people, or really, really, we must honor the people we find along the way, like Miss King. Like, lots of love and light and gratitude towards her, for sure.
she is still my Facebook friend. I still check up on her. I am
Mhm.
so grateful because I was at that school until the ninth grade, and she was there for a very long time. I don't know if she was there the entire time I was there, but I would always go back and check on her, or I know she was probably checking on me. And I would always, every time I saw her, I um, I only have positive memories of her, and I always will regard her because she was the first person in school to protect me. So yes, I can't. You're right. I do have to thank her because she means a lot to me.
Yes, yes, yes. And for you to, like, it is so important to have tears for those moments. We must. We must. Um, they're so tattooed inside of us. So it's almost like as we are getting wounded or as these hurts are happening, like who shows up and how they show up really makes a difference. It's almost like when we're left in those moments by ourselves. Gabor Mate, who's an expert on trauma, Carmen, talks about that it's not just the experience itself of the trauma, but it's when we feel alone in the trauma that actually causes all the exacerbations. But when we have, like, when I think of her, it's not that she was actually cognitively explaining things to you, it's that she felt like this bedrock. um yeah, for you.
I, I didn't tell myself I wouldn't cry. I just was like, you're not going to have like snot. Just kidding. Um,
And we welcome it. We welcome it. We welcome it. We are humans with all of our heart and our feelings and our love for Miss King.
the second person is my sister Kia. Kia also went to that school. And so Kia also was in the same situation, just in a different grade. She was one of probably three or four Black folks who were in her class. She completely understood what I was dealing with. And I think she also never fully explained to me how she really felt. But what she did do is she gave me permission to have my little crew. So she had her crew of friends that looked and felt safe. It was like her little like multicultural United Colors of Benetton was real popular back then. And that's what her friend group looked like. It was like real multicultural. They would all hang out. And I could tell that those folks, it was an all girls school at the time. So, like, those girls were the cool girls because they like had figured out that that was the better way to like exist in the world.
Yes, yes.
So I really looked up to those girls because one, they hung out with my sister, but two, I think that that gave me like almost a different idea of what these friendships could be. Like, okay, well, I don't just have to hang out with the Black folks. I also don't just have to hang out with the white folks either. I
Mhm.
could hang out with this like mix of people, but we all just have to vibe together. And so I really appreciated
Mhm.
having that model of what it could look like. And I always felt like I could go to my sister and I was tethered to her anyway because of my mom's job. My mom is a flight attendant, and so often I would just end up hanging out with my sister anyway. So I just spent a lot of time in her world with her friends.
Mhm. What a template and what a foreshadowing, and all based on energy, on energetic frequency, like who you vibe with, right? Sort of what based on all of the invisible versus the visible, right, Carmen? Having that experience of what it can be, what it could be, but mostly what it feels like. Like it just felt real. It felt cool.
Yeah.
And Carmen, I'm struck by how innate it is in you to track community. This
Hmm.
is how you started the podcast. Like how you track groups, you track community.
Hmm.
It's almost like a part of who you are.
I never thought of it that way, but it is a part of who I am. And um, it's where I get my energy from, honestly. I mean, from the flea market to like literally from the flea market to the concert to hell, Chuck E. Cheese. Like I just I love it. I always have. And I can find the community aspect in anything and enjoy being in other people's community. Even the other day, I went to a Filipino concert with my friend who's Filipino and his mom, and I was acting like I grew up with Gary V. And I have no idea who this person is. But I do love community because I like the feeling that it gives. It's very authentic.
Talk about that. Let's mine, the ingredients of community. And you know, because you've known me for a while now, that so much of one of the taglines that I'm using is we won't do it alone because we don't have to anymore. Right? That we must coexist, and we must exist in community and communion. So let's just for playfulness, um, what do you find are the emotional and energetic ingredients of community, Carmen? What is the vibe?
Um, to me, it if it was a like a frequency, it would be like a wave.
Mm.
If it was a song, it would be like a Frankie Beverly and Mace song, like to me, it feels like a barbecue. There's music, there's laughter, there's food, there's there's loudness, there's probably even dissent. There's dysfunction, there's joy. And to me, you feel it in your chest. You feel it in your throat. Um, like it's like it's in your like the belly. Like community is laughter that is in your belly. Like you can let go. And when I think about all the times I'm in community, like for real, not just like, oh, I'm going to an event for work, but like I'm really in community. It's when I feel like I can laugh at my frequency because I have a really loud laugh. And I think a lot of, as you say, colorful people,
Yes, we're
I
color.
think that we're loud. Like a lot of us are loud, which is why we are sometimes like getting in trouble. Actually, yesterday I'm in Atlanta for a speech and I was practicing my speech last night in my room and somebody called security on me because I was practicing my speech. Cuz I was practicing it at full voice. But it's because my full voice is loud. Anyway, I think that community, it also feels a little bit, that's why church is so successful. It's why synagogue, why anything that brings people together, even with all of the problems that it has, I think that the reason why there's a lot of success in it is because it has a lot of those same ingredients. And this is very particular to perhaps like certain types of religions, like in the churchy world that I grew up in, the music side of things,
Oh, yes.
like the gospel side of stuff,
Right. The praise.
oh my god, that alone is enough to help people go from whatever they're going through to the other side.
For centuries. For centuries. It's a high state of meditation to do music and praise together. It's a really, really high state of meditation. And I even venture to say that that's why raves are so big.
Mm.
Really, because it's communal. I know it sounds odd. Everyone's like, yeah, because everyone's doing ecstasy. I'm like, no, no,
Mm-mm.
no, no.
It's the
There's something way more primal
Mhm.
going on. Everyone's moving to music. Everyone's together. It's all about elation. It's
Mhm.
all about praise with the body. Oh, I'm feeling it right now, actually. I'm feeling it in my body. That I believe that raves or
Mhm.
communal, what I call like drumming around a fire, because that's the feeling is it's so primal and ancient when we come together and we drum around a fire that it's an extremely high meditational state. But Carmen, as you were describing sort of in the chest and in the belly, I kept feeling like I kept thinking of what I feel in my Colombian family, which is a huge communal
Mhm.
family. I felt it in my back because
Mm.
I felt that even if we're not in touch and I need help, they've got my back. Like, even if I'm not doing a ton of community with them, let's say throughout the year, they've got my back. During the pandemic, we all were like, right? Like, there's this sense of if I go to them and say I need money, there's a bunch of them that are going to pool their money.
Mhm.
Um, and that it doesn't involve there's a value, there's this invisible threaded value in community
Mhm.
that is about having each other's back.
Mhm.
Um, and as you were saying that, because the dark or the shadow part is sometimes the desperate need for community can lead folks to, that's where gangs come in, that's where cults come in, that sort of this preying on people who need
Right.
community, right? That's the underbelly or the darkness of the way community can be exploited. I'm not sure we could even call that community.
Mhm.
That's
Mm.
not community.
Something different.
It is different. It is different. Community being sort of communion
Mm.
with each other.
I appreciate what you're saying about the back part because I feel like one of the reasons why I just love getting together with my folks is I feel like I can feel my ancestors behind me. Like I'm and when I before I met y'all and I would say stuff like that, I'd be embarrassed. I'd be like, that's a little bit weird to say.
And who's y'all? Say a little
Y'all like the other empath people.
the tribe. Tribe. And we are a little weird.
When I would say that, I'd be people were like, "What?" But I do. When I play spades with
Hmm.
folks, with the cards, when I play cards, because to me, cards, we playing cards. To me, that is the epitome of being in community. One, you have to know how to play the game. Two, the stakes are high because it's like fun, it's loud, there's music, there's food, there's usually
There's
just a glass.
banter.
Yeah. There's a lot of trust. But excuse me, but I feel like to even learn it, it's it's like ancestral. There's so many traditions that we have, even about like holidays and cooking meals. They're ancestral. And
Mhm.
one thing that my husband encouraged of me the other day, because we were talking about Thanksgiving, and I was saying to him like, well, I don't necessarily know if I like jive with the history of Thanksgiving. And he was like, well, yeah, we don't necessarily jive with the history, but what we do jive with is the tradition of making the foods.
Mhm.
Like that was gifted to us. Those like from our families, like those recipes. We have written all those recipes down. And so I believe that when I'm cooking, I am not cooking. My grandmother's mother,
Mhm.
whose name was also Alma, my grandmother's name is Alma, her name is Alma. Alma.
Alma, Alma.
Hmm.
That means soul in Spanish.
I know. And the restaurant across the street from where I'm staying is Alma. So I'm going to go stand outside of it and take a picture.
Yeah.
Um, but she cooked every single day and she made desserts for her 10 and 11 kids and my great great grandfather. So I believe that when I'm cooking, I'm not cooking, she's cooking. I believe that when I'm playing cards, I'm not playing cards like my ancestors are. So for me, that's why being in community feels really important because it's almost like it's honoring what they left for us. I feel them and their joy sitting in the room because I only imagine what they had to go through for us to be able to sit so freely in a room and have joy.
And when you were describing how you grew up with your grandmother, sort of these, when you were giving us the picture of these women, your sister, your aunties, I felt that all of a sudden I had this image. Of course I felt it, right? Sort of in our empath way. I just had this image of this lineage, this long line. I don't know if you've ever seen photographs or even a painting of women braiding each other's hair in a row. And that's what I saw in you, Carmen, in that moment. All of these women, so beautiful because it's also what we pass down to other women, right? This,
Mhm.
you and I talk about this idea of self-care and self-beauty, of braiding each other's hair and telling the stories as we braid
Mhm.
and teaching other women as we do this. So that image of you and your aunties and sitting at your grandmother's feet, basically, to hear the stories, the guidance, so powerful, so powerful.
You're literally seeing it. That's how I grew up. My aunt Daria, who I love to death, to life, she braided my hair. Like she's the braider in my family. She used to give me box braids, which takes hours. I used to get mad at her because she would just braid the outside and be like, come back tomorrow and I'll braid the inside. And I'm like, I look a mess. If you look at my childhood photos, I have braids because Aunt Daria
Yeah.
did my braids. My mother would hot comb. I don't even know if people know what that is, but you take the hot comb and put it on the stove. She would hot comb my edges at my grandmother's house before I would go to school in the morning. So those the my yes, all the everything that you just said, that is exactly the relationship that I have with them. It's exactly how I grew up, and it is I think why I try to be so like giving of my time with other women because I feel like they gave me a lot of time. And I mean, like, not just the intellectual time, but like the time to sit down to help me care about myself.
It's so incredible because what you're describing or what's happening in our flow is also, it sounds like the core, one of the core ingredients to community is ancestry.
Mm.
And it just feels actually very quiet and powerful. There's something about, because I'm thinking, when you build a community at the YMCA or you bring kids together or at the Boys and Girls Club,
Mm.
um, it just feel, or even at churches, there's this invisible, quiet, and yet powerful force of ancestry, of, I want to say, and I want to bring it to who we've been as humans, Carmen. it's beyond just our different tribes, right? Our Black tribe, our Latino, our Native, our Jewish tribe, our Muslim tribe, like our tribes, our empath tribe. It's it's actually part of our human DNA
Mm.
to be in community. And I would even posit and push this even more, that community means care, and that's how we continue to exist. And we know that in the Black community. Are you kidding me? Right? Without communal care, we go extinct.
Yeah.
Period. We are killed off
Yeah.
without communal care, without someone saying, hey, y'all, help the pregnant woman walk. Hey, y'all, let's carry the older people. Hey, let's build this shelter. Without communal care, we go extinct. Um, so there's something that you're describing that's invisible and powerful and keeps us alive.
Mm.
Keeps us alive.
Well, and you know, I think many of our cult. I so appreciate you bringing this in because I think many of our cultures are rooted in what you just said, but American society and the way that, you know, I don't want to rag on capitalism per se, but the way that capitalism is set up, it does not um it's not a friend to community. And so, you know, I like making money like the next person, but I'm not on team make money over caring about community. And so I think that sometimes even in my now work, I have this tension where I'm like, I'm not willing to give up caring about all of these people over making the money. I do want to have, you know, resources to live my life so I can go on vacation, but I also think that there has to be a way for us to have mutual aid and community care and to lift up folks and to make sure that the elderly people in our community are being taken care of and all of the things. All of the things. And we don't know what will happen in the future. Therefore, can we set up some systems so that more people than not are taken care of? And I don't mean like, you know, living necessarily in a socialist society. I just mean like, are we in our everyday lives? What are some of the ways in which we're doing the little things to care about each other? You know, for me, one thing that I do, and I know it probably is so weird for the people that I work with, you know, I'm one of the bosses at work. And no matter the gender and no matter the title, I open the door for my team. And you know, the guys on my team, I always can tell that they're thrown off. That
As a ritual, you do this as
yeah,
a
I
practice.
open the door for them.
Mhm.
I revere them. It's a part of my care. I care about them. They're my community. They work for my team. And I want them to know you don't open the door for me. I open the door for you. You wake up early and make sure that I look good. So, yes, I open doors for you, not the other way around. Because when I'm bopping around and looking good and people are giving me all this credit, I know who did all this work. It wasn't me, it was you. So I open doors for you.
I
And
honor
to me,
you.
that's
I
connected to
see
community
you.
care.
Yes. Yeah. I respect, honor, see you. And Carmen, don't you like these little practices and rituals? See, this is what I call heaven on earth. You know, people think that I'm talking about a utopia or that it's something really far away. No, 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 no. It's in these daily moments, in these daily gestures, in these daily acknowledgments. So let's backtrack a little bit to
Mhm.
this idea of capitalism, and even if we don't get into it, but there's something about what you're describing is somewhere along the way it became dualistic, as if having money in some way affronts being in community. or as if community takes from having money. Like in some way, it became at odds. And it might have been capitalism, it might have been in this sort of very individualistic society that the American culture and part of it is, as a psychotherapist and as someone who's been in a codependent culture for we do struggle with codependence in Latin America in many, many, many ways. I've really appreciated the having to learn how to be an individual, how to individuate, how to really love myself in spite of sometimes what my religion believes or my cultural beliefs. But something has happened along the way that it became really divided and
Mm-hmm.
almost has had to be like it's one or the other. You either have money, right? That like the money is the root of all evil, and so that means you're against this caring for community. In fact, even you having to say, I don't want to be in a socialist community,
Right.
right? It's not even that. How can, right? It's not like it's either this or that. It's like, how can we not have all of us have an abundance
Right.
of money, which is for me heaven on earth,
Yeah.
and we care for the community and we care for the weakest link
That's right.
without it having to be these very drastic ideologies, right?
Right.
Carmen, say a little bit more about where these concepts, or maybe your volume two, your awakenings, whether they were heartfelt or heartfelt, either one, your volume two, this awakening to yourself, to your beliefs, to your passion.
Mm.
Say a little bit more about that part of your life.
I heard the word um, empath like a couple of years ago, like maybe like 10 years ago. And I remember reading it and I thought, well, that can't be me. Um,
Why not? Why the face?
because it felt a little bit psychic.
Ah, right.
And I didn't feel like that. It felt a little bit psychic. I didn't understand. And I was afraid to identify that way. And so I think that I had just always known the word and I was okay with the word. And I kept the word in the back of my head. And so but keeping the word in the back of my head, as I started to come into myself, has allowed me in this time to accept it for who I am. Because once I accepted that I am an empath, it all actually makes sense. When did the awakening really start? I mean, for me, I feel like it truly started when I became a people manager. I became a people manager very early on in my career. When I was 21 years old, I started managing human beings. And I was running an organization, and I was, to be frank, a little ill prepared to be running a whole organization in Washington, D.C. And a lot of folks had taken this risk, like me, to come and work in this like really hard place and be working on higher education access, and they were away from their families, they were away from everything that they knew, and they were in their early 20s, and somehow I had become like a boss and a little bit of a den mother. And so in that time, I kind of became a mixture of half boss, half I'm gonna keep it real because we got to keep the lights on. I need to be a fundraiser and all these other things. But
Mm.
the other half was I'm gonna invite people over to the house. We're gonna cook. We're gonna all be on the super shuttle together. We're gonna go on retreats. We're going to have fun. We're going to all learn the electric slide. We're going to do things together. I guess back to your point, we're going to be in community.
Community.
And I picked up a practice around um I can manage very large things at work. And a part of that usually is connected to managing a large bodies of people. But for me, a part of my agreement with most of my employers is I am not going to manage these people the way you think I'm going to, and you're going to have to be okay with that. Because for me, my relationship with the people that I manage is an intimate one. I care about these people as if they are my own family members. And sometimes that has been to my own detriment. And I've had to learn how to control that. But that for me was a real turning point, was when I learned that that a part of my own superpower is that I can lead very big things with these very talented teams of people. But the way in which I'm going to motivate them is to care.
Ah, so powerful. So one of the things you're describing is sovereignty, because to say that to your superiors or to your boss or to those authority figures, like, I'm going to do this and I know I do this well, and I have to do it in the way that I know to do it. And then, of course, the ingredients of intimacy, which is such part of the empath. The empath needs an intimacy. And then, of course, over here, there's a little bit of the shadow of codependence with your
Oh,
group, right? Like, exactly, of like, oh my God, I was leaking all over the place,
all over.
right? Where you were like, because the empath can deplete themselves, right? For the sake of the family, for the sake of the group, for the sake, but there was so much sovereignty in you, like, I will do it like this. And there is, I think, one of your superpowers obviously is that you come from community and that you are a community builder. Like, it's just in you. It's
Mm-hmm.
just in you. um that is not in everybody.
Mm.
It is not in everybody. And to also be aligned, it sounds like part of your volume 3 is to find full alignment with who you are. Carmen, you're making me think of this idea of this ritual and this practice of opening the door. Um, because when I think of our planetary community and who we are, I'm always struck by the fact that the people, if we go by the hierarchical system that I believe is old Earth,
Mm.
check it out. The people at the bottom of this hierarchy are teachers or trash collectors. Trash collectors, for me, are one of the highest. And I teach this to my son. I teach this as a value. I speak to this idea of opening the door, because who are we as a community, as a neighborhood, as a planet,
Mm-hmm.
without folks helping us collect the planet's trash?
Mm.
Who are we if we're not honoring? And I think in New Earth or in Heaven on Earth, all of these roles, teachers in particular as well,
Mm-hmm.
are given the highest wisdom, respect, opening of doors. So when you're talking about us seeing people, all groups of people and how they contribute, and doing that with honor, respect, and intimacy, which is so much of what you're describing, Carmen. How does that land with you? Are you with? Are you do?
Yes.
Who are we with? Who are we as a planet? What is this planet? Um, without those communities who are all about who we are at our foundation, at our root chakra as a planet. Um, Carmen, say more. I mean, we only have like a few minutes left about these awakenings, but also this, if you could say a little bit about how your wounds became your gift,
Mm,
then also just moving into
mm,
what you see for heaven on earth, what you see for new earth, given all that you know now, given your own alignment with self.
mm,
Lots of
mm.
questions there. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I was listening to you intensely. That's why I think that um, the reason why I agree with you so deeply is because I think that there's a world where there's so much hierarchy at work, and there's so much hierarchy in the world that we don't treat people like humans.
Mhm.
And for
Yeah.
me, heaven on earth is that sure, everybody can play a different role, but can I want for everyone to still be treated the same. I want for people to feel good, because when I experience someone that feels good, that feels happy, that feels clean, that feels supported, um, for at least when I experience them, I feel like I'm unlocking their best self. And some of my greatest lessons have been that nothing is actually about me. I have to, one thing that you have taught me through the process of learning about being an empath is I can put things out into the world and let them go and hope. I can want for things to go a particular way, and but it is okay for them to go off into the world and in their imperfect way. For me, that's connected to heaven on earth, because I think there used to be a world where I
Mhm.
really wanted for everything to be perfect. I was I wanted for everything that I tried to do um to be connected to some type of perfection. And why? Says who? It's okay. And actually, since I have let go of that level of perfection,
Mhm.
I think that it has I think that it has eased a lot of pain for my husband. I think it's eased a lot of pain for the people that I work with, and it's a softer life. And I'm still working through it. Even as I think about my own body. Like, sure, I work out, but if I get on the scale and it doesn't go down a pound, I have like disconnected myself a bit, not disassociated. I just am like, okay, if the outcome isn't 10 pounds down, I'm just okay. Like, heaven on earth for me is like being content that I just went in the first place, that I was caring for myself. I've spent a lot of time, I believe, um, being an achiever, and I have achieved a lot. I actually think that I have hit every single professional goal that I have set out to achieve. If I wanted to make it, the money, I made it. If I wanted I've had every job I've ever said I wanted to have. So I've now kind of moved into a space where there's two spaces that I really want to move into in my life. One is I want to create community at home. So I want to have my own family, like with me and my husband. I would like we have a plus one, I'd like a plus two or a plus three. And, my husband actually said to me the other day, because we were talking about having children, and he's either 44 or 45. I can't remember. Don't be mad at me, Lee. And I said to him, don't have kids with me because you think I want to have kids. And he and he was like, I want to have kids with you because I want to have kids with you. And that meant a lot to me.
Oh, it's so romantic. It's love, it's intimacy. Yes, those words.
We deserve to have community because we will
Mm.
create a beautiful little community. We will give and gift, hopefully, something wonderful to a little group of people and give them things that were given to us or break generational curses that we don't want for them to have to deal with anymore.
And that's heaven on earth. What you're describing right
Absolutely.
there is heaven on earth.
Absolutely. And I think on the professional tip, I desire for all of the people that I work with to feel a level of freedom. I haven't like fully figured out yet what exactly that means. But what I know for sure is that a lot of people feel confined and confound and boxed in and like they have to lie and contort. And I don't want them to feel that way. I want people to feel a sense of freedom. I want them to be able to do the thing that they do best and to launch and blast and have the spaciousness to do it. And it that might not be with me, by the way. Our relationship might need to end for them to be able to do that, and that's okay too. I'll be their reference. But I desire, because we spend so much time at work, for people to have a different relationship with work, because I do think that there's a connection between freedom and work that I'm starting to unlock. And I hope that when I'm sitting on my porch one day, like sipping my sweet tea, that the thing that I'm doing is supporting a younger, or maybe even like a older woman that's kind of sifting through her career, but truly helping her get to a level of freedom. Because I think that it is somehow connected to like living a happier life.
Well, I think there's something about the myth of perfection that keeps us in a hierarchical rat race, whether that's political or racial or gender or beauty, right? There's something about I need to be perfect that keeps us in a constant hoop jumping and rat racy competing because there's so much competition, right? We want to be perfect. We want our children to be perfect because we're competing. We've got to top somebody, okay? Which doesn't mean we abandon our excellence or our striving, but the myth of perfection really keeps us in lack and in massive um, divisive competition. So dropping that, debunking that, really making dents in that mythology is so important for the heaven on earth and the new earth life that we are. If we're going to shine in our authenticity, we have to let go of trying to be so perfect, so good, the non-sinner, trying not
Mhm.
to be sinners, right? And so that is part of the move over to new earth and to heaven on earth. And check out how that's showing up. And what you're saying is look at the freedom there is on people being as authentic as they can be on TikTok, on Instagram. It's authenticity these days, even if it means showing up a mess, you're not having makeup on, whatever.
Mhm.
It's that type of authentic showing up that is what's taking off these days.
Yeah.
What's taking off because bodies, different bodies, accepting them. And that, I think, is everything. The bridge building to heaven on earth and new
Yep.
earth, Carmen.
Yep.
And it's not about perfection, it's about authentic humanity. You were going to say
And I
something?
think the last thing I would say is for me, I wrote down all of these different words around like what does heaven on earth mean to me?
Yes, right. Tell us,
I
tell
mean,
us, tell us.
because for me they're words. It's joy, laughter, abundance, love, spirituality, connection, movement, exploration, flexibility,
Mm,
fearlessness, sensuality. And the last one that I put is creativity. And I think that growing up, I was afraid and embarrassed of my creativity. I was almost ashamed of my creativity. I felt like being really good at PowerPoint, or that I was on the school TV show, or that I dressed very with really bright colors, or that I wear big earrings, or that I always
or
wear
that you
bright,
DJ
or that I'm a
and
DJ.
favorite.
Like I wear bright red lipstick to the grocery store. I was embarrassed by that stuff. Why can't you be normal?
Mm.
And I mean, I would ask, why can't you just fit in? Why can't you just go to J.C. Penney and look like everybody else? I can't. It's not in me. When I try to put on a suit and go to work, it don't fit. When I wear a suit, like the regular black suit, it looks terrible. When I put on houndstooth, it looks great. So for me, the number one heaven on earth is to be able to fully accept and live in my creativity. And for me, I feel this close to being there because I'm like, you know what? When I live in that creativity, even in formatting documents, this is so boring. But even when I format documents in Word and I get in my colorful bag, they always shine. They always look better. So I want that for myself, but I desperately want that for other people too. Because I think that there's a society out there that tells people there's these like three jobs: doctor, lawyer, and then something else that's not creative. And meanwhile, everything is created, from this computer to this podcast to this cup to this notebook. Everything is created. So we should celebrate creativity and allow for the creatives to create.
Oh, I cannot tell you how much you're saying. You're so juicy, Carmen. And by the way, everyone, she is a badass DJ that gets signed and paid a lot of money to DJ. So, talk about creative. It's not just in her PowerPoints, but let me make a connection for you that's really important here. Carmen, when we move out of trauma surviving, out of a jacked up post traumatic stress central nervous system. When we move to trauma rising, which for me means heaven on earth living, which is where we are more healed and we are more vibrant and we can live in our bodies without the trauma, without the anxiety, or at least with a lot of rituals and practices and communal support and therapy and meditation and yoga and sound baths. When we move into a trauma risen state and we can touch our heaven on earth, we are creative.
Mm,
We are creators. When we are in survival, when you're trying to keep the lights on, it's really hard to create. Now, there's been many people who have, many artists who have, that have been broke, but it is hard, right? Because of this, you're so torn. So, what you're describing and what I am seeing as what's coming, there's going to be conflict, there's going to be a lot of tension. We've got to just get through this very turbulent stage on planet Earth. but we are going to hit a renaissance. And heaven on earth, a new earth, is about renaissance, is about being the creators that we actually are as humans. So think of how innate and organic your passion is, that this is what you're saying. You're saying, for me, the core ingredient of heaven on earth is that we be creative, and which comes from the word to create,
Mm.
which of course is what the quantum field did, is what God did, whatever word you want to use, is that these worlds, these planets, this universe has been created. So,
Mhm.
so powerful, so powerful. Everyone, Carmen has so much juice to share. She does so many things. I'm going to put links and who she is in the world in the bio, but also everyone should know that Carmen is one of the co-authors of the Empath Leader book that is coming out, and she's writing a chapter on all of her juice, on who she is in the world and how that connects to your empath nature and being an empath leader. So that is coming, and we cannot wait. And maybe she'll DJ at the launch party. That's the hope. Carmen, thank you so much. And the way I like to close out this podcast is for us to take a breath together, putting our hands over our heart and leaning back and breathing out. And we do this for the purpose of calming our central nervous system, which is a main ingredient of heaven on earth, but also to bring us together in our energetic fields, mind, body, spirit, and taking a breath in. And everything amazing comes in threes. So one more breath. And I'm breathing out. And coming back to each other in our energetic community. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.